In 1818, workmen clearing rubble inside Dunfermline Abbey found a skeleton. That alone would have been enough. A royal grave hidden beneath the old abbey floor, a body Scotland had almost forgotten it was looking for. But then they saw the chest. The breastbone had been cut open. You expect damage in medieval graves, collapsed stone, old injuries, bones broken by time, but this was different. Clean, deliberate, a cut right down the middle. Whoever buried this man had opened his body before putting him in the ground, and in Scottish history, that detail points to one name, Robert the Bruce. Because Scotland's greatest king wasn't buried in one place, his body was taken to Dunfermline, his organs were buried near Dumbarton, and his heart was sent on a journey it may never have completed. But the authorities didn't rush to celebrate the discovery. The post-Napoleonic government was nervous. Scotland was politically restless. Crowds gathering around the remains of a king associated with independence weren't what the British state wanted. When the public reburial finally happened in 1819, around 10,000 people came. They sang, "Scots, wahey!" And then, for decades, the grave was left without the monument you might expect. The brass memorial plaque, now at Dunfermline, was paid for privately in 1889 by the Earl of Elgin, not the Crown, a private individual. There's another strange detail. The copper plate used to confirm the identification, inscribed Robertus Scrotorum Rex, was apparently found days after the official examination in the rubble. Some later scholars have suggested it may have been planted, not as a fraud exactly, more like an act of protection. Local people worried the bones might be questioned or taken away, may have helped make sure Scotland didn't lose him twice. A king had been lost once, they weren't going to lose him again. And even now, there are historians who have questioned whether the bones are definitely Bruce's. Most accept that they are, but certainty is harder to come by than the stone above the grave suggests. This isn't just the story of where Bruce was buried. It's the stranger story of why medieval Scotland cut out the heart of its king, carried it across Europe, brought it home, lost it, found it again, and buried it at Melrose beneath a stone that doesn't quite answer the question. Is this really the heart of Robert the Bruce? And if it is, why does the story feel unfinished? Bruce died on the 7th of June 1329 at Cardross near Dumbarton. He was 54, but his life had already become something larger than one man should probably have been asked to carry. He fought for the English, then against them. He'd killed John Comyn before the altar at Greyfriars. He'd been crowned king, excommunicated, hunted, defeated, driven into hiding and written off more than once. His brothers were executed, his wife imprisoned, his daughter was caged, his kingdom was almost lost before it was properly born. And then somehow he came back. By the end, Scotland had been recognised as an independent kingdom. The Treaty of Edinburgh-Northampton had been signed. He had a son and heir. He'd done what most people thought impossible. But there was one thing he'd never done. He'd never been on a crusade. For a medieval king, that mattered. Especially for a man who'd killed at an altar, spent years under excommunication, and carried the weight of war, betrayal and bloodshed through most of his adult life. A crusade wasn't only a campaign, it was penance, a way of settling accounts with God. And Bruce was running out of time. So as death came closer, he asked for something extraordinary. When he was gone, his heart was to be removed from his body and it was to be carried to the Holy Land. The man he trusted with that task was Sir James Douglas, the Black Douglas. To the English, a nightmare. To Bruce, one of the few men who stayed with him through the worst of it. After Bruce died, his body was prepared for burial. His heart was removed, embalmed, placed into a silver casket and given to Douglas. That image is hard to get past. A warrior carrying the heart of a dead king across Europe. Not for display, not as a trophy, as the last unfinished promise of a friend. Bruce's body was carried to Dunfermline Abbey, where earlier Scottish kings already lay. His organs were buried at the chapel of St Serve near Cardross, but the heart went with Douglas. In the spring of 1330, Douglas sailed from Berwick with a company of Scottish knights. The destination was the Holy Land, but the road passed through Spain, where Alfonso XI of Castile was fighting the Emirate of Granada on his southern frontier. Douglas stopped to join the campaign. At Tiba, near Malaga, he charged too far ahead. He was surrounded, and he died there, far from Scotland, carrying the heart of the king who'd asked him to make one final journey. The famous version says Douglas threw the heart into battle and cried for Bruce to go first, as he always had. It's a powerful story, maybe too powerful, because the exact scene appears much later in the record. The Spanish account of the battle doesn't mention it. Walter Scott helped turn the legend into something Scotland wanted to believe. But the heart did come back, that part matters. The journey failed, the story didn't. The casket was recovered and brought home, and the heart of Robert the Bruce came to Melrose Abbey. There's something about Melrose that suits this story. It doesn't feel like a simple ending. The abbey sits in a landscape already full of memory. The Eildon Hills behind it, the Tweed nearby, old border roads crossing through one another. A place where stories don't really stop, they settle. And somewhere beneath the abbey floor, Bruce's heart was believed to have been buried. Then centuries passed, the abbey fell into ruin, the exact location faded, the heart became less an object than a belief. Until 1921, workers in the chapter house at Melrose uncovered a small lead casket beneath the floor. Inside was a shriveled heart, preserved in tar. It was recorded, photographed and reburied, and then Scotland lost it again. That detail almost feels impossible. The supposed heart of Robert the Bruce, found in one of the most famous abbeys in the country, and then mislaid beneath its own floor. In 1996, archaeologists found it again. They drilled into the casket and used fibre optic cameras to look inside. There was a second inner casket with a copper plaque confirming the 1921 discovery. But they couldn't prove it was Bruce's heart. The preservation had destroyed any chance of useful DNA testing. Even when a direct descendant of the king offered a sample, the science couldn't answer the question. So the official position stayed careful, reasonable to assume that's as far as they could go. And maybe that's why Melrose still works, because the heart isn't powerful because a lab has signed it off, it's powerful because Scotland chose to keep it there. On the 22nd of June 1998, the casket was reburied. 2 days later, on the anniversary of Bannockburn, Donald Dewar unveiled the marker stone. The timing wasn't accidental. The Stone of Destiny had recently come home, a new Scottish Parliament was coming, Scotland was reaching back into the ground again, looking for something that could still hold. And this is where the older shadows start to gather. Because once you have Bruce, Crusade, Douglas, Melrose, Rosslyn and the Sinclairs in the same story, the Templars are never far behind. The legend says they appeared at Bannockburn, refugee knights hidden in Scotland after the destruction of their order, riding out at a crucial moment and breaking the English line. There's no contemporary account that proves that happened, but the reason people keep reaching for this story is obvious. Scotland was one of the places where the Templar story didn't end cleanly. The trial at Holyrood in 1309 was strangely thin. Only 2 knights appeared. The rest seemed to have vanished from the record entirely. The Sinclairs at Rosslyn held land directly beside the old Templar preceptory at Ballantradock, the place still called Temple today. And 2 Sinclairs died, with Douglas at Tiba on the journey carrying Bruce's heart toward the crusade he never made. That doesn't prove a hidden army of Templars rode at Bannockburn, but it does explain why the legend refuses to die. The facts are scattered enough to make people wonder, and in Scotland, wondering has a habit of becoming legend. This landscape holds all of it. The Wallace statue above Dryburgh was the first statue of Wallace ever erected in Scotland. Looking out over the Eildon Hills towards Melrose, Without Wallace, there may have been no Bruce story to inherit. Wallace lit the argument, Bruce inherited it. One became the martyr, the other became the king. Below that statue, Dryburgh Abbey sits quietly beside the Tweed, a place of burial and memory for centuries. Scott is here, Haig is here, some are clearly remembered, others have become half story, half history. And then not far from all this, there's another tomb. The Monteith Mausoleum, standing alone on a hilltop above Ancram. Difficult to reach, easy to miss. It has no direct connection to Bruce. It doesn't need one because it belongs to the same country of strange monuments, missing bodies, half-remembered stories, and stone built against forgetting. General Thomas Monteith Douglas spent decades in the Bengal infantry. He inherited a Scottish estate from a great-aunt, changed his name to claim it, and built an elaborate tomb on a hill overlooking a battlefield he had no connection to. 2 stone lions guard the entrance. Inside, angels modelled on his daughters. When restorers opened the tomb in 2018, it was empty. Nobody knows for certain what happened to him. Grave robbers probably. There were rumours of wealth brought back from India, but the result is stranger than any explanation. A monument built to hold a man, and no man inside it. After following Bruce's body to Dunfermline, his heart to Melrose, and his story across Europe and back, that empty tomb doesn't feel like a distraction. It feels like an echo. Bruce himself was a deeply flawed man. Violent when he needed to be, ambitious, ruthless, and capable of betrayal and courage in the same lifetime. But over time, he became larger than the simple facts of his life. Robert the Bruce didn't leave Scotland one grave, he left a trail. His body left at Dunfermline, his heart came to Melrose, the vow crossed the sea with Douglas, and the legend kept travelling after that. Into Rosslyn, Bannockburn, the Borders, and every place where Scotland still argues with its own past. Maybe that's why this story survives, not because every answer is certain, but because the questions are still alive.